everybody. Welcome to another week in Pensado's Place. He's Dave Pensado. I'm Herb Charlick, and our guest is the incredibly diverse and talented Ariel Rechtshaid. But first, got to tell you, the buzz for the Pensado Fall Free-for-All, brought to you by Warm Audio, is absolutely bananas. Entries are coming in from all over the world, 3 winners each week, a Just Sweetened Grand Prize winner at the end, thanks to Rhino Records and Audio Sorcery, and every person who enters wins an all-access pass for 30 days from Groove 3. Weekly winners receive a trio of great mics from Warm Audio, Isotope's Neutron 2, Sonarworks Reference 4.1, Eventide's brand new SB 2016, Leapwings Dyne 1, recently nominated for Best Plug-In by Sound on Sound. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Real cool.
Track Factory from the Tascam and Dave's new book, right here, The Art of Recording Vocals. Plus, you get the Groove 3 Pass and IK Multimedia's iRig Stomp and Amplitude 4. That's a ton of stuff. Let's see who the winners are. Jordan, hit the drum roll. Very good. From Gretna, Louisiana, Jackie Robinson with a famous name. That's pretty cool. From San Marcos, Texas, we have Eric Holtz. And from Bakersfield, California, we got a local, sort of local, Justus Dixon. Congratulations, folks. You now join everyone who enters to be eligible for the Sweeten Grand Prize. And when we talk about Sweeten, very cool. Rhino Records reached out and they added this very cool special anniversary box set on David Bowie. It's called Loving the Alien. It's got vinyl and CDs and downloads and booklets and all kinds of stuff. They're going to throw that in. Audio Sorcery also added their D-Mix Pro. You'll be a guest on Pensado's Place. Warm Audio is providing a mic pre, and compressor. Super bundles from Eventide, their Anthology 11. Sonarworks Reference 4.1. Isotopes 08N2. IK Multimedia will give you the iLoud micro monitors and Total Studio 2 Max. Year-long membership from Groove 3 and Tascam's Track Factory and Porta Studio. That's a lot of goodies. You want to get it. How do you get it? Enter at pensadosplace.tv/fall free-for-all. Share a little bit of information and you're in. That's pensadosplace.tv/fall free-for-all and you're good. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter, like and subscribe, and please notify if you would, and we thank you for that. Yes. Before our ITL, we want to take a moment and recognize the genius of Geoff Emerick, a true legend whose work scans such artists as Supertramp, Jeff Beck, Cheap Trick, Elvis Costello, Gino Vanelli, and much more. But of course, Geoff was known for his seminal work with the Beatles and with Paul McCartney. I mean, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Abbey Road, with McCartney, Band on the Run, and so much more. Hats off to Geoff Emerick, a true legend, and safe journeys. So, DP, what's our ITL?
This week I'm going to show you on some synthesizers how to add chorus and space.
Cool.
Cool stuff. Check it out. A lot of times when you put effects and processing on a sound, it doesn't sound as natural as you'd like. In other words, it alters the sound. That's what you put it on there for. But what if you could control the amount that it altered that sound? Well, we do that with parallel compression as one of the main ways. There's a lot of different types of tracks that I think really benefit from parallel compression. The first is vocals. The second is guitars and bass. You know what? Everything benefits from parallel compression. I've even parallel compressed Bob Horn. It was painful, but somebody had to do it. So check this out. This is a bass without the parallel. Well, let me play it. I'm gonna do it backwards. Check this out. Not bad. Now I'm gonna click the bass in. I'll give you a second. Go get some headphones or some earbuds so you can hear this. Okay, here we go. Now what happened? Well, my original sound has this EQ on it, and my parallel has this EQ on it. You can see that we're doing slightly different things. By the way, I love this preset I came up with. 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, 140. Copy this one, and I find so many uses for it. If you'll notice, my bandwidth is really tiny, and it's great for surgical on the low end. And so I used it twice, once to get the sound shaped in general, and then this tightens it up for the mix. Now here's what I'm doing on the parallel. I'm limiting it. Here's an EQ. And then dimension D. And I picked a setting on the dimension D that gives me a width that I like. So not only am I adding low frequencies in and a little bit of a compressed sound, if you notice I have no compression on the original, I can control the amount of everything here. I love the width that this gives it. It's just enough. And I know you guys are getting tired of me saying this, but please, please, please try this on any number of things. It works on more than just bass. The same thing will work on vocals. Right, Bobby Ninja?
Right.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Our guest today, God, we haven't talked to him, I think, since Avid. We did
2
it at
years
NAMM
ago?
a couple years ago. His diversity is incredible. The results of his work you've heard, and sometimes you don't even know you've heard it. Please welcome to the desk, Ariel Rechtshaid. How are you, man?
Good, man.
Yeah?
Good.
Been a minute.
It has been a minute.
Absolutely. What you been up to?
Pretty much just same old, head in between the speakers, you know, playing around with gadgets that inspire new sounds and trying to make records sound interesting.
Do you follow your gut when you do that? Basically, it's not a preconceived plan. Some of it is making sure you keep room for your instinct and doing what you're doing.
Pretty much all of it at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the way record making's kind of shifted on some level, sort of, you know, just even push me even further into that just follow your gut thing, because it's less and less you're in a studio with the clock running, and it's more about just, it's less and less that there's demos ahead of time. It's more kind of co-writing, producing while you're writing, getting it all together. So it's really just kind of this instinctual path that leads you to closure at some point.
Feels to me, and we talk about this sometimes, curious about your point of view, seems to me like today's record making, composing, mixing, is sort of this hybrid collaboration that just everybody kind of adds in this train that's going down a path, and then you get in and you add your car to it and put your mix to
The
it.
visions aren't as distinct as they used to be, from writing to composing to mixing to engineering to mastering. That's just a blur that takes place now that I like.
It's very blurry, yeah.
When you're being creative, is it helpful to have, in your words, a warehouse full of shit, and then you see that and you get in, oh, let me try that, and then let me try that. So it's in a traditional sense, when you go to another studio, all those things aren't there.
Yeah, you bring what you need, right?
Yeah, but then you're limited to what you brought.
Right.
But when you're working at your place, it's a very creative space, and you got things everywhere that you can just pick up and.
Yeah, I think having that's good for when you run into a wall, you know, and you just need to kind of like pick something up and
Break through it.
yeah, push it and see what happens and see if it inspires like jumping over that hurdle that you've reached. But I think for the most part, I mean, I think there is like definitely power and limitations and like, you know, kind of minimalism and kind of keeping your head straight, you know, being able to like zoom out and actually listen to the song over all the details and little noises and stuff. Those are fun too. I mean, it's most of what I do, but
Before you start, do you have then a more complete vision of where you're going to end up, or
it's so different every time. I mean, like if we're starting to write a song in the studio, of course I have no idea what we're going to do. I mean, sometimes we have an idea of what kind of a thing, like it's, I don't know. I hate to do it, but some sort of reference point, you know, let's try and do this type of thing or whatever. And then you kind of have an idea, and 9 times out of 10, it's completely different by the time you reach the finish line. But yeah, it's so different. Every single song on every album, every artist, everything is just a completely different journey, you know? So it's like hard to really answer like, what's the way to do it, you know? Like,
The answer might be that there is no way.
no. I think that there's like tools that I've kind of created for myself, or like that I rely on to like help me kind of get through different parts of the process, you know? Like, I don't even know where to start. It's like, again, depending on the project, like if we're going to do something that we want the idea of it sound like a live band, you know, but you don't have the luxury of being in a tracking room, you know, with a drummer that will just do what you want when you want them to. So, you know, created contact kits that kind of have drums that I've recorded that have like the vibe that just, I don't know, kind of inspires me and keeps me like, you know, feeling like I'm on path, you know, because it's like at this point, clean drums have been recorded, you know, really good hi-fi drums have been recorded by a million people a million different ways. So it's like having something that has like a little bit of my sound helps me feel like I'm like heading in the right direction rather than just programming in like an arbitrary drum part or whatever. And so just kind of building things up with the sounds that I like, you know, and those sounds evolve like every few months. I'm just like, you know, okay, bored of that, onto this, you know, onto the SP 1200 or whatever, back to that one.
When they evolve, are you saying like pick a band like Haim, which you've had a lot of success with, those drum sounds are some of my favorite. They're not traditional pop sounds, nor are they tied to any analog period of time.
Yeah.
So when you place that sound in the creation, you're saying it changes as the song goes on and evolves? Or?
I think so, yeah. I think like, you know, there might be you know, again, this is sort of completely arbitrary, whether it's like the initial inspiration was Prince or the Eagles or Kate Bush or whatever it is. Like you might start with one thing, like whether it's Danielle playing drums and kind of getting this real tight, tapey 70s drum sound. And then as time goes on, you're like, all right, that's cool. Let's add like a clap to the backbeat, you know, and all of a sudden it doesn't sound like anything from the 70s because nothing really, you know, like an 808 clap or something or even just like some random one shot that I have inside of Pro Tools or whatever it is, you know.
And that transition from the 70s to a different sound, is that a function of finishing your creativity or altering it? I guess there's not much difference in the two, is there?
Yeah, it's just kind of finding it, you know, like you kind of, you start to like, you hold on to the bits and pieces that are important to the spirit of what you're going for, but you don't have to like, it doesn't have to be like, I'm not like a purist of one kind of genre or one kind of sound or like retro or whatever, you know, like, and that's what's really fun about all the crazy plugins and, you know, like, I can just imagine like recording like a really tight drum sound that might sound really vintage or whatever, and then taking the low ender plugin and putting it on the kick drum, and all of a sudden it sounds like, you know, really modern in some way, you know, and then triggering this backbeat to some kind of sound that sounds like it's coming off of, I don't know, you know, any kind of sound designy sound or whatever, and then you kind of have a little bit, you might have like the feel that kind of connects you to the spirit of something 70s, but then the sound is a bit more modern. Maybe the hi-hats are like vintage and live sounding, but the kick and snare somehow end up being really modern. Whatever it is, this is sort of arbitrary, but it's like I'm kind of working through like an imaginary workflow, you know?
I love that you use the word tapey. It's something that's tapey.
Yeah, I think I was telling Dave earlier, like I feel like we all want something that we can't have. I think back when that was the only medium, everybody was trying to figure out how to make it as clean as possible, get rid of that little bit of hiss, you know, and then once you have like only digital recording, you're like, people are like throwing in fake hiss tracks, you know, or vinyl crackle tracks throughout the whole thing, which is like hilarious, you know, just to try and get that sound back in there. So
I actually sampled one of the inside tracks on a piece of vinyl of a Beatles record, so I actually used Beatles hiss.
Oh.
And I was so proud of the m.w.a F16.
Don't ever tell anybody.
I was just sitting there thinking, when you have a particular sound, let's say a drum sound, and that's a combination of a part, it's the big groove contributor. But when you change the sound, you run the risk of changing the genre, because we tend to determine genre by drum sounds, just like we can age a video by the cell phone, you know?
Right.
If it's the size of a cinder block, we know we're in the 90s.
Right, right.
And so we kind of use sounds to denote genre.
Genre.
Is that part of your thought process, or it's just randomness?
I think, you know...
Because you've always fought genre? You've always
I haven't
kinda,
really. I'm not consciously. I just think that like I came up listening to so many different styles of music, and like I think my main concern was just don't make it corny. You know, it's not like it's corny if you're combining this and that. It's just try to make it not be corny. You know, and so combining drums off an SP 1200 or something into something that might otherwise be considered like a rock band or something, that always interested me, you know.
That's what strikes me as cool about your career, because Troy Sivan, to Usher, to Madonna, to U2, to there's this kind of non-linear course to doing things that seems to me to speak to the way you like to make your music. Like,
I mean, I never was like, I mean, I do have music that defines me, you know, from like my childhood and stuff like that. But I think my approach with production is, well, it's really just that. It's an approach, you know, and it has more to, you know, who I choose to work with has more to do with the artist and their artistry and less to do with like what genre they belong in, you know, because as I'm sure you know, both of you, it's like a great artist is a great artist, you know, and someone has something to say, whether it's aesthetically or lyrically, that's what turns me on, you know. So I want to work with anyone like that, and it doesn't matter what genre they're in, you know. I might have started out around a certain circle of groups, you know, bands, singers, songwriters, whatever, that kind of might have labeled me a certain kind of producer at first, but it's even, I can't even understand like eras, you know, it moves so fast. Like, you know, you when you've been producing for 3 years, you think anyone you've done within those 3 years, that's who you are. And then all of a sudden it's 6 years, and the second 3 years are like completely different, and then the next year and whatever, and it just keeps changing. And before you know it, you're like, yeah, I don't.
So one of the things about you guys, you know, I was listening to you talk beforehand, and really with a lot of our guests, is there's this sort of your own personal way that you approach your production, your songwriting, and so on and so forth, and then how you use technology. And the technology evolves, and that kind of say, you know, it might be 3 years this is in. So like we have mutual friends at Eventide, for instance.
Yeah.
And they're 2016. You guys have the original, and now they have this brand new plug-in, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about, because both of you guys are fans of it, if I get that right.
I'm a fanatic.
Yeah.
Which I guess is another word for fan.
What is it that they do and that they are now evolving to so you don't get trapped?
I'd love to hear what Ariel has to say. For me, much like a carpenter earns a living with their tools, the ultimate goal of having these tools is to build a great house. And so tools that just work are rare, because they have to match my idiosyncrasies, and what works for me might not work for Ariel. In the 2016, especially on Stereo Room, you put it on a vocal and it just melts into the mix. So all the Mariah Carey records you heard from back in the day, that's 2016. Tom sounds, that's mono room on Tom's for the 90s. It found a slot with different things in different decades. And for me, it's just a good old buddy, you know, that I know it's got a go-to thing for me. And I have to suppress my laziness sometimes and just automatically put it on and see if I can beat it. And sometimes I can, but very rare, especially on vocals and things and strings and acoustic instruments. It's wonderful. Is it perfect soloed? It's what, I think it came out in the 70s. No, early 80s it came out. So essentially it's a different type of algorithm than we use now. But the main thing is, Herbert, it just works, you know? It just works, and especially on vocals. You know, I preached on the show, music is just, for me, feel and groove and vibe and emotion. And I remember pictures of the Beatles getting off an airplane in New York, and the young girls and the boys in the audience, they didn't know whether to shit or go blind. They were just screaming and fainting and passing out. And that's what I want my audience to do when they hear a mix. I want them to feel that emotion or feel something.
Blind? Oh, okay, cool. If you can get video of that. But we'll move it forward.
Yeah,
so
let's see what Ariel's
the plug-in should emulate what happened with the original and move forward, correct? Is that?
And it does. I mean, it does. It has like, I mean, it's like you were saying, the different eras of technology, different sounds, different that the algorithm, whatever it is. I'm not like the super techie person, but it has a sound for whatever reason, and the plugin does a pretty good job of, like a really good job of emulating like the characteristics of the real one, you know, and I also agreed with what you were saying about like what it sounds like soloed versus what it sounds like in the track, because
It's like eating garlic or putting it in spaghetti sauce.
exactly, it's not necessarily like the most hyper realistic sounding room compared to today's emulations, you know, but it does meld into a track really nicely. And then also what I always thought was cool about this one, and I'm not even sure if other reverbs from the era or even new ones have, they have this too, but there's something so simple about like the position
the
sliders and stuff, and just being able to really like kind of move it around
Yeah.
within this virtual room and get some like really interesting sounds.
And you can see all your settings on one page.
So simple. And I like that about the plugin more so than the hardware unit, because we were talking about how mine's a little different than yours, but mine you have to you scroll through the parameters. Very simple, but you scroll through them, right? I mean, they're not all sliders, right?
Well, that one.
The one.
Yeah.
One slider, but not like this.
Yeah. No, this is great.
This is like
great.
they're all right there, and you just kind of turn it up and down, and it's really cool. It's really interesting. So I mean, for me, you know, reverb it's nice to kind of take something that's mono and give it some life and put it in a space and light up the track a little bit. It's also for me always been something that I occasionally use as an effect, you know, and I think that, again, my 2016, I came upon it because I saw one used and it looked like it was from the era of, I kind of acquired hardware processors just sort of like randomly, you know. I picked up a 910 at some point and I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. Then I saw that there was a 949, so I got that one, you know. When I saw the Eventide 2016, I was like, oh, it looks like that. It looks like it's from that era. And it is, you know, and it looked like just one, like a little bit more modern than my 910. So I was like, I wonder what a reverb from this era, a digital reverb from this era would have sounded like. And it did not disappoint me. Mine happened to have more, like maybe another EEPROM in it that had some like bonus parameters on it. It had like a gate in it and, you know, and it's just, I always like anything that I can run something through it and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to get back, you know. Yeah. That's what I like about tape too. It's just a little bit of the element of surprise. Of course, you hear it and then you decide if you like it. You don't have to use it, but it helps that kind of creative process when you're like constantly in control of everything. You know, you're like, this is what the kick drum's going to sound like. This is what the snare is going to sound like. This, you know, especially when there's a lack of human interaction. Like if you're not recording an actual drummer who's feel or personality is going to surprise you. If you're just programming something, there's just, it's nice to have a little bit of an element of surprise, you know, which is what's nice about using the old drum machines versus just moving samples along the grid or whatever. But anyway.
You know, in your earlier years, there was playing and performing as well. Is the artist side of you part of what informs the songwriter, producer, mixer side of you?
Yeah, well, when I got into producing, it was just basically like me kind of trying to figure out how to. The initial beginning of it all was just me trying to figure out how to communicate better in the studio, because I went in and tried to record things, realized that it was trash, and I didn't know how to write a song. I didn't like the way anything sounded, so I just had to. But I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to make. I didn't even know what, you know, room sound versus directs. I didn't know anything. So I started getting into the studio just to like learn and learn the art of transferring what was in my brain onto recorded medium. And so in that process, I just ended up working with other people and it evolved into me being a producer, long story short. But yeah, so it was always kind of approaching it from whatever the recording needed. If it needed, if the song wasn't quite right, you know, if I had a suggestion for it, and there's no right or wrong, but if I had a suggestion for how to make the song better, I suggested it. And so in some cases I was co-writing. And if it was just a matter of like watching the performance and like kind of commenting on the performance, then that's what I was doing. If it was like engineering by default, you know, than it was, because I didn't go to engineering school or anything like that, you know, and so many talented engineers that I love working with, but sometimes, you know, budgets, whatever, the situation is what it is, and you find yourself like turning the treble up or whatever, trying to make it sound the way you hear it in your head. So I kind of just approach it from any different place. And I guess back to your question, yeah, it all sort of started from being an artist and wanting to, yeah.
Because I think it seems to me, certainly from my perspective as, you know, in my management days and all the different people we've interviewed and we've talked about this, if you have the luxury of performing in front of a crowd or you're a DJ or something like that, and we talked about with Mike Dean, there's something that you learn
Absolutely
from that process that translates to your records that are invaluable.
Absolutely. And I find that, like, you know, when I go through like a 3-year like back to back record thing where I'm just like stuck in the studio, I kind of lose touch with that. And sometimes I feel the effects, you know, not across the board, thankfully, but like on a song or two, I'm like, oh man, it should have been like this. And of course you're going to feel that way no matter what. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of collaborations that I've had throughout the years that I was fortunate to have. That, like, for example, working with Diplo, we did a lot of records together, and he'd walk in and just kind of, he's DJing every night, so he's like, that's the wrong tempo, you know, like I would never play something at that tempo, like what is that, you know, let's just, I don't even say it was like 97, he'd be like, it should be 100 or whatever, just something like random, like, well, the song's not going to sound right if it's at 100, you know, like the way the vocals are written or whatever, and then we speed it up, and I would be like, this is horrible, lost all its feel, whatever. 2-3 days later, I'm used to it. And, you know, and he was right, because you feel that live, you know, when all of a sudden, like, one song is just a little bit slower than the other, it's got like this loss of energy, you know. There's so many of these, you know, there's so many rules that if you really, that are valid, you know, and are important if you stick to them, like tempos that work, keys that work when it comes to like dealing with bass and stuff like that, you know, like your low notes that translate really well. And there are things that I like every time I like finish a song and something's wrong, I'm like, I knew that, you know what I mean? Start over, you know, whatever.
And expand on what Herb's question. Not only is it helpful when you're the artist, it's also helpful when you go to a live event. And Bruce Woodine said that on one of our shows, but night before last, I was watching Access TV. I think that's Mark Cuban's label. And there was a 2-hour movie of the Rolling Stones in Havana, Cuba. Changed my life. I swear, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not the biggest Stones fan. I like certain songs a lot. But the performance they put on and how they held that crowd for 2 hours standing up, and the way they organized the set to go from key to key and from tempo to tempo, and the way they orchestrated little moments so one of them could go change clothes. They did about 10 or 15 costume changes at the time. Big band.
Yeah.
Man, I left with renewed enthusiasm for our profession. It was, and these are like AARP members on stage, you know?
Right.
These guys are like up there. And
Mick
never slowed down for 2 hours.
This is a recent concert.
Yeah, real recent. I think, what you remember her, about a year old maybe?
I don't
the movie's out now, but I think it was within a year probably. I highly recommend watching it. I don't know if it's on Netflix or not, but it seeing that crowd and seeing what they did to get that crowd to react.
Totally.
I think there's a small place in my part of the music world, the mixing part, where we can interject that and learn from that. You know? It's all about our audience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just from my perspective, I think the hottest mixers of the day are guys who are interacting with people who are out making records, seeing shows, and doing so forth, because it gets in your system, and then it gets in your mixes. Yeah. Because you can intellectually do a mix, but you can't get that same feel unless you're in a crowd or talking to the A&R guy or do it. You know, there's input that has to come in that translates out, and live performances, particularly today when there's this sort of gap between what the record selling process is. You know, now you're trying to go through that and download streams or do whatever, but lots of folks are getting to the live performance part because that's where you can make a living. And
I think it's really important. It's crazy how that's what's crazy about music right now, is it's so like compartmentalized. There's people who do like really well on Spotify and have no live audience at all, and then there's people that crush it live, and don't necessarily kill it on Spotify, but whatever it is. And so it's funny, and I guess like the best of them do all of that, but
Wouldn't you say it's kind of like if Ernest Hemingway wrote The Old Man and the Sea, that's a novel. Should he write the novel so that it can be made into a great movie? Should we worry about the compartmentalization, or should we just look at them as separate
I can't
forms of creativity?
I can't worry about that. Yeah. It's just like then you're just starting to
Well, I like the Spotify guys, and I like the YouTube guys. Take me through a typical day in the office. So you're in the studio, in walks Adele. What happens next?
Oh yeah.
Faint, and then you get back up.
Yeah, exactly.
What was it like just hearing her sing in front of you?
Wild. I mean,
How do you start? Hi, Adele.
It really was like that. We had never met. We were at a Metropolis studio in London. She walked in. I hadn't even heard the song that she wanted me to work on. It was a funny thing. I knew the guy who wrote it with her because we had done a record together. This guy Tobias Jesso Jr. And he was super jazzed. He wrote a song with her, and she had the files, whatever it was. And I don't know exactly what happened. Like maybe they tried to produce it and didn't kind of come out quite right, or whatever it was. And he kind of put me up for the job. They flew me out there. She played me the song. It was just a piano and vocal demo that she had like on her phone or something like that. And I took it in and I kind of tried to come up with a game plan. Like first day was just kind of listening to it. Yeah, just,
So first day you're just getting ideas, nothing.
Yeah, and it was also like a funny thing. It was like kind of this last minute. I happened to be in Europe, so I popped into London. I would have come from LA, but I was already in Europe, came in for a few days, listened to the song, got Tractor recording it, Tractor playing it, singing it, sorry. Tractor singing it to some piano, just separated so I could take it back to LA and then continue to like come up with an arrangement. Because I was
didn't do the meat and potatoes part?
No, not until I got back, because I didn't have any of my resources.
Was there ever a moment where she disagreed with one of your ideas? And how did that go down?
Not really. It was actually kind of, it was a funny, sort of terrifying experience, because I knew that it was just a funny time. I remember like she was making that record and the people I knew in LA who were trying to work with her or working with her and giving it a shot, and everyone was kind of pulling out their hair trying to get a track on the Adele record, and I just remember I kind of like laughed at it, because it's just not how you normally think about music. You're just messing around until something sounds right. It doesn't feel like you're trying to like win it a competition or something. And then of course once I met her and you feel the gravity of her, you know what I mean, just because her voice is so special, and you want to make something great, and you want it to work. And so I came back and all of a sudden I was that guy, and I was having a real kind of funny musical problem where like the song, it's going to make no sense trying to talk about it, but the way she sang it was very syncopated. And like her only notes to me were that she wanted drums on it. She's like, I think this song should have drums, because it was this real ballad type song. So
I forgot the name of the song.
It's called When We Were Young.
Right.
And it could have been just a piano ballad, but she wanted drums. And so I was like, okay. And she kind of told me some records that she liked,
Were any of them yours?
Nope. I mean, she was talking more about like Leonard Cohen and stuff like that. She was
my goodness.
So I was like, okay, cool. I get it. And then I went back and I was trying to find a beat for it, and it just was like really difficult. Like no matter what you did, it kind of sounded really, it sounded like proggy almost, because the way she was singing it was like.
Was she swinging a little bit?
She was, if you can imagine, she was just singing on like the pickups of everything. So everything felt very syncopated.
Oh, okay.
And
like come in on the 16th after the 1, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or even the 8th after the 1.
Wow.
So it was just and it sounded amazing. It was like, but it was like one of those things where I felt like I was watching her. I couldn't like get into it. I couldn't sing along with it, and then it took me like 3 days. I was like pulling my hair out, and then finally I just because also we recorded it without a click because I felt like it was going to lose the feel. It was just so I just took it all, I scooched it an eighth note back, and all of a sudden it had a backbeat, and it's hard to describe, but it was this like real.
So you actually literally did a beat on time with her vocals on the one, let's say, and then you took that entire beat and slid it to the right an eighth note. That's what
I took her vocal and slid it to
Forward.
the left
Okay.
an eighth note.
And that worked?
Yeah.
Damn, that's kind of cool.
I had to kind of like massage it a bit, but
Yeah.
I was terrified because like she was gonna, and the first time she heard it, I could see, because I was too scared to send it to her. So I didn't want her to like have this like hear it wrong, like and be like, this is off, and like just like never call me back, So I was like, we're doing this on FaceTime, So I streamed it to her, and I was like staring in her eyes while she was listening. She was like, I couldn't quite understand what was happening rhythmically in the chorus, but I like it, I was like, all right, good, live with it, I promise you. And then
Did you keep the first vocal that you recorded on her?
2 takes
Done.
ever.
Wow.
I mean, there was just like, you could not ask for more. Really, the second take was just because I'm like, I don't think we can do this once, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
Gotta earn your living.
yeah, normally I record at least 5 takes, to then like kind of,
Right.
but she's an amazing singer. I mean, that's just the truth of it.
There's a compliment here somewhere.
Okay.
A lot of times when you see a performer perform, and this has been this way since I was a child, and then I buy the record, it's never the same. So the first live album that caught the imagination of the entire public was the Live at the Fillmore that Tom Dow did on the Allman Brothers. When I was listening to the Haim records and I saw them live, I was like, oh my God, no, I'm gonna be disappointed when I hear this record. But you managed to get something on that record that had that made me feel like I was watching a performance. The Troye Sivan record, same thing. Is that a conscious thing or is it a subconscious thing? Either way, I want to know how you do it. I want to do it.
I definitely would love for the record to.
You're not making live records, but
No.
you get the same feeling. Because like say Troy, you need the visuals to make it complete.
Right.
Or say 21 Pilots, you need the visuals. Or Tame Impala.
Yeah.
Or the 1975, he's a motivated front man.
Yeah.
And I was noticing with Jagger, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always hope that it's going to give you an image of the performance. I think that like that's the idea of the recording of the performance of the song, that there's, even if you abstract it and try to get kind of creative with it, that there's still an element of like the singer is singing to you, and if there's a drummer, the drummer is playing in front of you, something like that, Mm-hmm. Obviously not necessarily as cut and dry as it was, records from the 60s where you literally just heard like the drummer over there, the bass over there,
Mm-hmm.
That's like really, like you can literally almost see it when you put headphones on. But I definitely strive to like maintain performance. It's tough because a lot of people want to push further than that now, and they want to, and I do too. I mean, we're all kind of like, that sounds cool, but that's already been done, So it's like, it takes like a great deal of discipline to like just back it down and just bass drums, guitar, and a vocal or something, or a piano and a vocal.
Yes, that makes sense.
Because you really have to like believe that what you are saying, the tone of your voice is unique enough to make it different from the 8 billion other records that have been out that do the same exact arrangement,
But along with the performer, whoever you're recording, and understanding their strength, I think some of that still comes from the fact that you've been a performer.
Yeah.
And there's an intuitiveness to when you're recording something or writing for somebody or whatever the case may be about salvaging that thing. And that might be something that is in your gut as much as it's in your head. And people who haven't done that can't really know that. They can emulate something, but they
And I
can't
gotta
know.
say also though, like over the years, like there's times when I'm not particularly thinking about that, and there's times when I am, and it changes, you get in the groove and you start like obsessing over one thing instead of another, and then like you realize you've not paid attention to that one thing for a while. It's time to pay attention to that again, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it
Right.
actually, one last thing I'll add is that like a big part of the sound of the records I'm making, I've found is like the environment, you know? So if I like, for whatever reason, find myself in my home studio downstairs in front of a computer, you can make records. I mean, you're talking about that giveaway you guys are making. You like, there's nothing in there that you can't make a full album with, right? And but it's gonna have a certain sound to it. It is what it is. I mean, you're like making music inside the computer. I recently finished building up a tracking space for myself. First time I've ever had one that will be like sort of off the clock, my own little tracking space, and I kind of foresee like a shift back to live instrumentation again. I mean, a shift, you know, last 2 years have been less about that, and the next 2 years might be more about that. And it's just kind of environment, you know? So I think once I have that, once I'm back in that space again, we'll see. I mean, I think that has something to do with it too.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Keep us posted.
All right,
sure.
let's see how you do here. Let's tee up batter's box,
You
sir.
have to do it. I know I'm winning this one.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
nervous.
I don't think so.
Okay, thanks, man.
I'm sorry. It's crafty.
Okay, quick. Juno 106.
Juno 60,
Tempo, BPM.
crucial,
Key,
crucial,
reverb.
2016.
Crucial.
He got me there. I thought I threw him a curveball. Bridges,
We don't have enough of them.
piano,
Love it.
loops.
Boring.
90s drums or 70s drums?
Depends what day of the week.
Inspiration,
Always looking for it.
bass,
Complicated.
harmonizers.
Yes.
What's the cheapest piece of gear that you used on a song that came out, was somewhat known?
Probably an SM58.
Cool. I might add, he did really well. Normally I ask 10 questions. I got 12 in
saw
today,
that.
so that's a world record. So
Oh, there's
congratulations.
a timer?
No.
Okay.
None of this is real.
I love that.
He did good though.
Yeah, I noticed that you. I started to edit, and I was like, no, I think he's on a roll. So,
Yeah.
because he's deliberate. That's that's a good sign of an athlete.
I mean, I have so much to say about all those things. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, everybody does, and nobody gets to.
Bass is like the never-ending quest, you know?
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
What?
It's time for us to humbuck our way out of here.
All right.
So, Ariel, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too,
See
man.
you, buddy.
Thanks for
Gotta
having
come
me.
back. Dave,
Yeah.
take us home.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm sitting here talking, not even thinking. One of my questions in Batter's Box was inspiration, and without inspiration, I'm not sure that creativity can exist. And I'm not just talking about music, but all forms of creativity. And so, how's that inspiration come? I think it comes from standing in front of people better than you and absorbing a little bit of what they do. I prefer the term borrow it. You can't own it, but you can borrow it and filter it through your own taste. And sitting in front of Ariel today, that kind of happened to me. I was inspired. So we'll see you next week.